Good morning. It's Debbie Leno here, founder of Luma Life Wellness and Coaching, creator of the Ageless Woman. Thank you so much for joining us today, whether it's live or on the replay. Here today with me in the sharing circle is my friend, Roseanne de Beaudrap. Thank you so much, Roseanne, for coming on today. I'm really excited to hear your story.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today and with
Oh,
everyone else. Thank you, Debbie.
absolutely. Roseanne joins us from Alberta, Canada, and she is a registered massage therapist with NHPC, and she's also a fellow MAP practitioner, and her specialty and niche is working with special needs children and their families. And how wonderful is that? That's such a cool niche, Roseanne. Roseanne also implements sound healing, and if we get a chance during this interview, I'd like for her to touch on that if she can. But let's just start with Roseanne. You have a really interesting story. Each of us do, right? We each have a story to share. And what I'd like to know is what were some of those difficulties you experienced in your childhood that really turned around to be your strengths?
Well, Deb, you know, um, in life, it's we can say it's so much like a butterfly. A butterfly comes out of a cocoon, and if it doesn't have the resistance when it's coming out of that cocoon, it does not have strong wings to fly. If you help maybe cut open the cocoon to make it easier for the butterfly, it will not be able to fly. It'll have a terrible life. So I had a lot of different opportunities, resistance to make me strong. So starting out when I was a young child, um, I was going to start with school, but I just came to me that I'm going to say that when I was a baby, my mom tried to leave my dad, and the neighbor she hid in the neighbor's house, and it was found out that that's where she was hiding with me, and my dad dragged her out of the house. Her parents wouldn't help her, so now when I'm 3 years old, we moved to a farm far away from all of our relatives, and we were in a French Catholic community, and we moved into a Protestant English community. Now, back in the 60s, as you recall, there was that separation, right? There was a lot of separatist activity.
It was very segregated back in the day. It
Yes,
really, there was so, yeah, there was so much going on in the early 60s for sure.
yes. So
Hmm.
we moved into this community, and I start school 6 years old, and at home, we only speak French. So, of course, I go to school, it's English. And I don't really understand what the teacher is saying all the time. So by Christmas time, I'm sent over into another classroom. So the way that the school was set up is there's a big school for, I don't know, up to grade 5, I think, 5 or 6. And what you would have maybe these days would be called a portable, but it was two little schoolhouses
Wow.
built right beside. So there was grade 1A, that's where I started. And by Christmas time, I was sent to grade 1B because I was trying to translate everything this teacher was saying, but I was labeled as a slow child. So in the grade 1B, there was only one other white girl, and no, just her and I. And the other students, I think there was 28 of us in that class. They were large classes. They were all First Nations people.
So First
Okay.
Nations people, is that the indigenous people of the area?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. So I come from a large family, and there wasn't always luxuries to be had. So if I ran out of a notebook or paper, eraser, pencil, or anything like that, I had to borrow maybe one from the teacher for a couple of days before I had my own. But there was this cupboard in the classroom that was for the other students, the Indigenous students. They got their own the paper, they got everything.
So
Um,
that must have really made you feel separated and
yes, it did.
apart and just, I'm sure you felt
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
kind of like I
Mm.
wasn't good enough to have that. I didn't understand it. I mean, I didn't know anything
A
about
child.
the treaties and all of that. But, I was just a little child. So what happened though is that I was teased by, of course, at recess time, we're all together. Grade 1A and B are all together. And now I'm seen as different from the other white children. In fact, from the very first day of school, I was different because all the girls wore dresses. I wore pants, pants that my grandmother had made sewn for me. And I loved them. They were brown paisley pants, and I loved them. But I was teased because I was wearing pants. But you see, the other children had all had the opportunity of kindergarten the year before. And because we lived so far out of town, um, my parents didn't have time to drive me into town, into the village for kindergarten, and then come back and get me at lunchtime because it was half days. Anyways, that kind of set the stage. And then, of course, they all knew each other because they were in the area. They went to the Protestant church and they all spoke English, whereas I was the new kid on the block, French Catholic. So that kind of set the stage. I'm just going to fast forward a bit to grade 7. Again, now we're all in one classroom, and there was about 28 or 30 of us, and only 9 of us were white. So you see, I'm a white minority in my community, I guess. So, but that
Even
really,
even how religion separated you, culture separated you, religion separated you, economics separated you. So
yes,
as a child, that must have been, you must have felt, what was your limiting belief out of all of that? You weren't good enough?
I wasn't good enough.
You weren't good enough.
And I was teased and bullied at school, and then I went home to an abusive home life. So my self-esteem was really down the tubes because at home, any decision that I made was wrong. It was always wrong. Um, I even to this day, I still have difficulty sometimes making a decision. I think it's bothers my husband. I'll buy something and now I'll keep looking where I could have gotten a better deal, you know. But anyways, uh, in grade 8, there was a change in um, the students could now go across borders, I guess you could say, because we were in this county. We had to stay in the school district. But what was happening was, as my older brothers and sisters were getting into high school, they were leaving home. They were boarded out with other people closer to the city so that they could go to um, the separate school there. And so when I came up to grade 8, I was able to go to the all-girls school where we wore uniforms. So, there it didn't look so much that
You blended more with everybody.
yeah, we blended more.
And when we're at that age, it's nice to blend.
Yes,
Yeah, at that age, for
yes.
sure. Yeah.
You could tell who was the wealthier ones because they had the better shoes, of course. But for the most part, it was like, wow, for me. Um, I had been the underdog, it seemed, for all these years, being bullied and everything. And now all of a sudden, I was in the top of my class. How did that happen? I was actually pinching myself, is this for real? And I had friends, and life was great. Although it was difficult getting on the bus, I believe it was something like 6:45 in the morning. We were the first ones picked up, and then the last ones dropped off at night. And still, we had to do our chores. Um, you know, it was
Yeah,
busy farm life.
I was just going to say, you're one of 7 children on a farm, right?
Actually, I'm one of 10.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
10. Wow.
Yeah, 5 girls and 5 boys, nice and even.
Wow.
Um, so my oldest brother and sister, and I'll be ever grateful to them. They had now graduated, and they weren't living on the farm anymore, and they helped my mom leave the farm.
I was just going to ask you to get to that story where you had a family escape,
Yes.
which was back in those days, Roseanne. She didn't get the support from her community or her church or any of those things or family.
No,
Yeah, she was
her
alone.
parents, exactly. Her parents said, "You made your bed, now you're laying it." And if she went to the priest for help, he would say, "Go home and be a better wife." My father had mental illness, and the most stressful times for him was the spring planting and the fall harvesting, and then all these children. You send a child out to do an adult's job, and they don't do it as you would expect, and so this would enrage him. Um, so the
So
times
how did
when
you guys get out?
Okay, so there were a few times that my dad actually was admitted to the mental hospital. And during those times, I remember one specific time I was about 6 or 7 years old. I had a Curious George book tucked in my arm, and I was in the easy chair. My sisters were all busy packing. We were waiting for my mom to come back. I think she had gone to see a lawyer. And she came back and she said, "No, we're not going." And I can remember my sisters being very, very angry. You know what? That was the winter all of us girls got yellow jaundice. And on an emotional level, yellow jaundice means anger,
Oh,
repressed
yeah,
anger.
sure, the liver. Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, that's what
yes.
stores anger. Wow, that's
So
very
anyway,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. So there were times when my mom tried to leave, but because she didn't feel she had the support, with the priest telling her, "Go home and be a better wife," and then when she went to see the lawyer, who is actually a friend of the family, and he just simply asked, "Are you sure this is what you want? Are you sure you can't make it work?" That was his way of asking her, "Do you really want this?" But she thought, when you're an abused woman, you don't think the same
Mm,
way as
right.
I'm going to say a regular woman would.
Hmm.
Um,
Mom was beat down.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. So
beat
she
down.
thought he was also telling her to go home and make it work.
Hmm.
So that's why it took my brother and my sister's help. So they asked neighbors, farming neighbors, if they would help. No, everybody was afraid of him. They asked relatives, like some of my uncles. No, they were afraid of him, of what the repercussions might be. So the RCMP, the rural police, they would come out and talk to my dad. Just general things. How are the crops? Have you seen any poachers? Things like that. And so they agreed to come out and talk with my dad and keep him busy for 1 hour. So I remember it was my mom and a couple of my sisters. My brother must have had to work that day. And my younger brothers were at school. And leading up to that day, I would walk into the room and my mom and my sisters were talking and they'd stop talking. So I knew something was up. And I think my dad knew something was up because he would be sitting in the living room reading the newspaper, but the newspaper was upside down. So he was straining his ear to hear what was going on. Anyways, the RCMP kept my dad busy for 1 hour, and we moved as much as we could pack into a station wagon and a Ford Fairlane, um, and a mother, cat, and 3 kittens.
How courageous yet frightening for your mom. I can only
Yes,
imagine what she has had to work through in her lifetime too.
yes,
Yeah. Wow.
a
Okay,
lot.
so the family left and
Yes.
life began.
Up to that point, that was the best day of my life. It's like I could finally breathe. I used to, I don't know about you, but in elementary school, the teachers would check off things for personal hygiene. Was our hair combed? Was our face washed? Was our fingernails cleaned? Well, I didn't have any fingernails, so I chewed them so much because of my nerves. I had long hair, but I would pick and pick and pick until it bled. I know there's a specific medical terminology for that, but I can't remember that at the moment. So we were in welfare housing. That first night, my brother and sister had arranged for welfare housing for us. And we arrived to the house, but we had no furniture. So that first night we slept on the floor. But hey, you know what? We had running water. We had a bathroom in our
Things
house.
you didn't have.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had a telephone. Oh, wow. That was awesome.
Grateful for the things that most people take for granted. You were so grateful.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was so grateful. And then there was the first day that my father came to visit us. And I had already arranged to meet a friend. I was invited to a Pentecostal meeting, and she was going to be there to introduce me. You know, I was kind of searching spiritually for a meaning for all of this in life, right? And one thing my mother did instill in us as well is a strong faith, definitely a strong faith. And this was the time of the born again Christians, right? So there was a charismatic movement in the Catholic Church, and then I was also invited from a friend who was also Catholic to go and check this out at the Pentecostal church. So I was trying to get out of the house, but you know, when my father came in the house, I hid in my closet because I was afraid. I didn't know what to expect.
So he found you guys and came back for visits occasionally?
Yes, not very often. It was only as my mother allowed, right? And it was always supervised visits. In fact, in the divorce agreement, he wanted unsupervised visits. And because she would not allow unsupervised visits, then he said, well, then I'm not paying child support. So there was no child support, and she was alone with all of the 7 of us, right?
Wow. Yeah, she stood up though. I'm so proud of your mom. She stood up against him, and she, you know, yeah, he tried to control the family with the child support. It sounds like, but your mom was very, very strong.
Well, you see, she didn't want us to be abused anymore. She had tried so many times to get us out of that situation and was never supported. So in those days, there wasn't any shelters for women, right? So yes, I am proud of my mom too. So
You know what I kind of enjoyed is your story. We talked a little bit before. I enjoyed the randomness of how you met your husband.
yes. So my mom, there was myself and my 3 younger brothers. My 2 older sisters, this was 2 years later, we moved to Alberta. We had been in Saskatchewan. So we moved to Alberta, to a beautiful city of Red Deer. And in high school, in Saskatchewan, I was on the semester system. In Alberta, in Red Deer, they were on a trimester system at school. So by the time we got to Red Deer, and I don't know why my mom didn't think to check this out ahead of time, but I could not start school right away. I had to wait 6 weeks before I could start school. So I was in the last trimester of the school year. Everybody else had all of their friends. And here I am. They called me a stubble jumper, you know, because apparently in Saskatchewan we're flatlanders. But not any flatter than southern Alberta, let me tell you that. So anyways, again, there was a little bit of the teasing thing going on, and you're the outsider. But I met one of my very best friends, and we're still best friends, you know, all these years later, or over, what would this be, 48 years later. Anyways, there was a program offered, it's kind of like a retreat. Well, a retreat for young people from 16 to 21 years old. And this was being offered in Calgary. So a friend of mine had invited me to this. It's a search weekend. And the way that works is that this group of young people transform the school into a retreat center. So there's the backup crew that does all the cooking and cleaning and setting up. And then there's the front crew, which take the people on the journey. Inner reflection, there's singing, there's guitar playing, there's time for reflection and journaling, things like that. And meanwhile, in the backup crew, we've transformed a classroom into a chapel. And also, it's all good. We sleep. One hallway is a dorm for the girls. The other hallway is a dorm for the boys. So no hanky-panky going on. And there are adults there to supervise also. There was Father Jim was very instrumental in having this program run. So anyways, this girl has a crush on this young fellow who plays guitar. She plays guitar also, and she wants to get to know him better. And she saw him going to the chapel. And she's kind of shy to go in by herself. So I said, oh, I'll go with you. I said, I'll introduce you. Even though I didn't know who this fellow was, that she was, I just figured I'm not going to let her love go unrequited love, right? So I go into the chapel, and there's these two guys kneeling at the front by the altar that we had set up, and they look up at us, and one of those fellows was this fellow that ended up being my husband, who happened to be the same fellow that she was interested in.
I love it. I love it. You just never know. You just never know, do you?
Never know. So if
Oh
I
my
had stayed in
goodness.
Saskatchewan, I never would have met my wonderful husband.
And that's interesting too. And I always find that so intriguing in how life takes us in different places. Yet if we don't do that, then this wouldn't have happened and that person wouldn't have come into our lives. And I just looking back on life and how your quilt gets made is so fascinating. So
Yes.
can you pick out like the instrumental things that were really significant to really bring you to where you are today?
Well, all of the experiences I had as a child at school, being bullied from my peers, I'm going to say, like white or Indigenous, that happened in both groups. It gave me more, as an adult, compassion for people who go through that. And that experience of being labeled as a dummy, that gave me more compassion for those who have difficulties learning. I wasn't a dummy, but I wasn't being taught in the way that I needed to be taught. I needed to learn the English language before I could be taught in the English language. So basically, I was English immersed, right? You hear
Wow.
French immersion programs. Well, and now, I don't even speak with a French accent. In fact, my French friends tell me I speak French like an Englishman.
Yeah, I've never heard the accent from you. That's so funny.
Well, maybe with a little bit of wine, we have a little bit of French.
And then it comes out, right? That's when my New
Yes,
York will sometimes come out is when I've had a few glasses of wine.
yes. There's those filters, those barriers get removed. So I grew up with limiting beliefs. That I was not good enough, that I never made the right decisions, um, that it was always my fault. Whatever went wrong was my fault. Things like that, you know? And
It's yeah.
I was going to say, I have a friend who has told me, Roseanne, ever since I met you, You have been on a journey of self-improvement. What is with that? Well, what is with that is because I want to improve myself and then share that. What is knowledge without sharing it, right?
100%.
That's where the power is. So, our first child was born with a mental disability. It's called partial agenesis of the corpus callosum, which means that part of her corpus callosum is missing. And so she has difficulties processing and expressing, receiving the information and expressing the information. So she's a dependent adult, and we're still very involved in her life, even though she lives away from home, away from us. She has a home of her own, um, supported roommates that she lives with,
Nice.
which are wonderful people. They've adopted her basically into their home, so it's just wonderful, wonderful. So, without all of these um, experiences that made me resist, and spread my wings and bloom where I'm planted, because
Mm.
where would I be? I don't know.
Your
But,
daughter was gifted to be born to a mom who understood.
well, thank you. I have often thought that if she had been born as my sister in this lifetime, I don't think life would have been very, very fair to her. I don't think my father could have handled a child like that, because she definitely takes a lot more energy than another child. And I
Oh,
know
sure.
I can say that because we have two children. Our son, having grown up with her, I know that he has more compassion as well. He's a very wonderful young man. So in this journey of mine, to help myself, I have a compassionate and empathetic heart to help others. And for the past 20 years, I've been an RMT, and every year taking more classes, more, finding out more ways to help people. I know that physically I'm not going to be able to continue doing massage forever, but I want to help
Um,
people for as long as I can. So I have learned Reiki, EFT, quantum touch, sound vibration healing, so many different modalities that I can now bring into a MAP session.
yeah, it's
So
wonderful.
yes,
It's a wonderful.
I just love being able to help people release their limiting beliefs, release their triggers that they don't even know why they explode like this. And I've been able to work with my daughter, and I'm looking forward to exploring that more. I did a map session with a young 9-year-old and his mom. He has ADD and had a lot of anger issues. And so the first session I did with the mama and him together, and so the mom worked on a trigger at the same time that he was working with the anger. Okay, so how much anger do you feel right now? And he was able to tell me from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest. He was able to say how high he felt about when he thinks about when he gets angry. How does that make him feel? And the mom was just totally amazed at how calm she became. And
Isn't MAP like the most incredible gift to give
it
other people?
certainly is. Yes, I'm so grateful that I have found this modality. It's like everything that's been in my tool belt, I can put to use now. Other
Yes.
than I still haven't quite. Well, you know what? I was going to say I haven't figured out how to do the massaging and MAP, but I do have a client who I was doing massage with, and she had been um, kicked. She was behind the bull. She was kicked, and she was pushed to the fence. So she, kind of rolled under the fence. And as I was giving her the massage, when I touched her shoulder, she had a broken collarbone from this ordeal, and she started to cry. And she says, I can't even talk about what happened without crying. And I said, oh, well, that was when I was taking the class.
Perfect.
And I explained this to her. I didn't do an introduction. I just basically told her how it worked. And we did a session with her on the table. And the next time she came for a treatment, she said, the other night, my husband and I had company, and I was explaining to them what happened to me because, her arm is up in this sling. And my husband was marveling at how calm I was. And I didn't cry once. She says, I think you helped me with that map.
That's an incredible outcome. That's a beautiful outcome. And I think that's what I see every time I've done a map session with a client. I think that's the most outstanding thing that we see as practitioners is the piece that comes through for people, being able to resolve and being able to come to peace. And so that's beautiful, Roseanne. And then what a great way to integrate map with a massage therapy. I think that's amazing.
I didn't know it was possible. So
you keep doing what you think is not possible, and it's going to be wonderful. Well, we kind of have to wrap it up. So what would your parting message be to our viewers today?
I would say that in spite of limiting beliefs that you may have infused into your being from childhood, there is a way to let that go. And it's a gentle, peaceful way so that you can go forward in life with more confidence, more calmness, and more satisfaction in your life. And the way that I have found is anything possible. Now.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's been a joy to have you on today. And thank you for being so open and willing to share your story. I just know that, it's going to touch somebody. Just the fact that you've lived the life that you have, but you've also lived the life of a parent with a special needs child, and how demanding that is, and how that can separate you from society too. That you go through so many things. You go through so many things as the parent of a special needs child that other parents don't realize, or they're not able to relate to because they've not done it. They don't understand. Yeah. So I'm sure that you have a lot to give. I know you do. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Well, I think we have to wrap it up for today. Again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And hey, if anyone out there would like to connect with Roseanne, I'm sure she'd love to speak with you. And I think on the post, I put her contact information. So go at it and have a wonderful day. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Have a great day, everyone.
Yes.
Looking forward to hearing from those that want to connect.